Hi everybody, this is Cindy from VintageToNew, and today we are going to do a tutorial for how to make any of the vintage Dories that have rounded corners. The first thing you're going to do is print out your pattern, tape it together, and I have a video for that and I'll link it below. As you can see, this pattern has all the sizes on it. We are going to make the Pixie planner, which is the largest one, and I'm going to do it with what I call an extension on it, and that's this piece down here, and that's what folds over, the edge of your inserts to protect them a little bit, like that. And it's an optional thing. So if you want the extension, you cut on the dotted line of the one that you're making. If you do not, you cut on the solid line. So this is the red one, and we're doing the dotted. So there's that. So then the next thing you have to do is find the fabric that you want. And you need to have a fabric that has about an inch all the way around. This is some scraps right out of my scrap bin, and I've got plenty of room. I'll end up cutting some off over here, so that's that. And one of the reasons I chose this was this is a directional fabric. These little owls all go in the same direction. There's a right side up. So that makes a big difference when you are getting ready to put the holes in for your elastics. You have to pay attention and get it going the right way if it has an extension on it, because the extension makes it go only a certain way. So how do we get started? Well, I'm going to get my fabrics lined up. I've already pressed them so that they're nice and flat. And then I'm going to work on the side with the stripes to help me get it straight on the inside. This is my inside fabric. And you lay your pattern down. And I like to back mine on cardboard. That's an optional step. You can do it without having the cardboard, but the cardboard makes it easier to trace because we're going to trace. And it also makes it so that you get yourself one of these little rings like this. Probably like a 3-inch one would be better. This is a little bit smaller. And as you make them, you poke a hole right here in the top, and you can put it on the ring, and then you can hang them up in your sewing room or put them in your closet or anywhere. And whenever you're ready to make a folder, a Dori cover, the planner Pixie one with the extension is already ready. So you just pull it out and you're ready to go. And I have to give a word of warning. Once you start making these, you'll want to make more and more and more. They are really fun to make. So here I'm ready, and I'm just going to mark around the edge. You need to have a marker, a fabric pen, a fabric marker that erases. So one that you put a little bit of water on. I've not done it, but maybe some dressmaker's chalk might work. Something like that. Something that will disappear. This is one of those pens that when you touch it with your iron, it disappears. Okay, so here is my line all drawn in, and if it wiggles on you or something like that, go ahead and erase it. Just go over and iron it if you have one of these. Start again, because this is really important that you get it really good. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to sew all around the edge. We're going to start here about 1.5 inches in and sew around over to 1.5 inches here. And from here to here, this is going to stay open. That's where we're going to turn it right side out when we're done. So let me cut this. Wrong scissors. Let me cut this. All right, and it's ready to sew. Well, I have everything out. I already traced my line onto my Pellon, and this Pellon is kind of expensive. I like to buy it at Joann's when they have their half off coupon. That's a really good tip. Now this one, if I put it this way on the Pellon, there's just a little tiny strip left over here. By doing it this way, I can put more planters over here or whatever else I would like to make. My one tip for this is you need to cut this out with a straight edge. When you're cutting your pattern pieces out, use a straight edge and a craft knife. I use a razor blade. Use a straight edge and a blade to cut it out, because when you use scissors, especially when you're cutting cardboard to back your pattern, it tends to want to get a wobble in it, and it's really important that these edges are really straight so that your cover turns out with super straight edges. Alright, so now I can get rid of this big piece. That's much easier. Another word about your Pellon. When the store cuts your fabrics, your Pellon, everything, they do their best to get a straight line, but it's not usually very straight. So if you're going to use the edge of your Pellon, straighten it up before you use it. And looks like this has a little bit here. Okay, so I have good straight edges everywhere, and now I'll just round the corners. Okay, so just that quick and easy. I started here, I sewed clear around and stopped here. I remembered to back stitch both places because there's going to be a lot of pulling on that when we turn it right side out. So for now, all I want you to do is to trim up the sides, trim down to 1/4 inch, about like that. And then across the top, keeping that about 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then down this side. All right, so now we're at the bottom. And at the bottom, I want you to have 1/2 inch. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be bigger than this. This is what we're going to turn under, and we need to have plenty there to sew it closed. So I'm going to come around my corner, and this is where my sewing is. I'm going to come off the edge there so that it's still sewed right there. So here's my sewing. I'm going to start here, come in, and around. So get rid of these little threads. So then the next thing you do is you clip your corners. And to clip a corner, you use the snip ends of your sharpest scissors. And you trim in about every 1/4 inch, really close to your stitching. But don't clip your stitching. That will cause a lot of trouble. So very close, but no snips into the stitching. All right. Okay. All right, so our corners are all cut and snipped, and we're ready to go. Do you see how there's a line here? This is when we traced our pattern, and it goes from stitching to stitching. because that's how we stitched. We stitched right on that line. We want to make the same line here on the back. So I'm going to use my marker or pen or whatever you have. I'm going to use my ruler to line up exactly from stitching to stitching. So there's that line. And that's going to be our fold line for when we turn this right side out. Okay, so the thing we're going to do next is we're going to fold back our fabric right on this line and pin it. So I can see the line, and I'm going to fold it exactly down and put a pin in it. I'm going to follow it all the way down this side, then I'm going to flip it over and do that side. Okay, I'm going to check it and make sure that it matches really well, front to back, and that my line is exactly there. I can kind of see it through the fabric a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is take this over and press it a really hard, crisp fold right here. I want it to be really strong so it stays there. Okay, so I have my crisp fold here. You can see how crisp it is. I use steam to get it really sharp. All right, so now we turn this right side out. And when you turn it right side out, you turn these little corners and push them with your fingers, like so. Do all four. And then I use a bone folder to go through and turn these corners out, because you don't want any of that fabric to stay folded in. You want it out and nice and rounded. A chopstick works good for this. Less than ideal are the ends of your scissors. If you use the ends of your scissors, they're a little bit pointed, and if you poke too hard, you can poke right through your fabric. And that's a really sad day when that happens. All right, so turned right side out, here we are. It's looking cute. So now I put it right side down, the front side down, and we're going to put the pellon in. So when we do this, it takes a minute because we are going to put this in and put all of the seams all the way around on top of your pellon. Okay, so now we have it all turned right side out, and when you put all of the seams on top of your pellon, this piece here naturally wants to go down flat. So we need to find our fold, and that needs to go right on the edge of your pellon, just right there. And for this minute, we're going to put a pin in it. Okay. And it goes that way all the way over to your stitching. That's why we wanted that line to be able to stay there. So there's that. Now I'm going to take this one and match it up exactly at the edge to edge. And we know that it's both of them are in the exact right spot because of that fold that we made. I'm going to put a pin in it. And sometimes it really feels like you're pulling this back cover a little too far because it wants to curl up just a little bit. But you know that it's right because we marked it. So put a pin in it. I'm going to take this pin out, making sure that that fold line is right on the edge of that pellon, and that this is folding up right next to it. Right. Okay, I've got it all pinned into place. This edge looks really good. So now what I'm going to do is take this over and I'm going to iron it, which will fuse the fabric both front and back to the pellon. And this is my last chance to go through and check and make sure everything looks just right. Okay, we've come back, we've ironed it all down, and it looks really wonderful. So here is the best tip of this whole video. All right, when we press this down, the cover fabric adhered to the pellon. This one is still open and we need to sew that closed. So if we put this in our machine and top stitch it with the cover side up that's already adhered to the pellon, it's going to sew nice and flat. If you sew it this way, your sewing machine pushes the fabric through, and do you see how that wants to wrinkle up that fabric as it goes along? When you do it this way, this doesn't move, and the feed dogs, those things that roll under the fabric on your sewing machine, have the little teeth that push the fabric through, will feed this fabric through nice and even, and so there won't be any wrinkles or puckers or anything. Okay, now because it's me and because I can't see this as I'm sewing, I am going to put just a couple pins back here for my own security, and I'll pull those out before I sew over them. And so the only thing left for sewing wise is to go over and to top stitch around. Now as you're top stitching, you have to put your grommets at 1/4 inch from the top and the bottom. So try to keep your top stitching out of the way of that. You can do whatever you want. If you wanted to do a really cute decorative stitch, that would be great. Do whatever you would like, but it needs to be top stitched to close the bottom. Okay, so here is our cover, and it looks just wonderful. The feel is really good. It's just great. And here is our opening. This is the bottom, and you can see on the inside it stitched down really nice and flat. That tip is just amazing. I used 2 rows of top stitching. That's just what I wanted to do. A tip: if you're pretty new to sewing and you've not top stitched a lot, it's easier to top stitch on a square corner than a rounded corner. So you might want to start out with a square corner, because when you're doing a square corner, you go down to the end, you put your needle in, and then you pivot your fabric and go like this. This one, you're just kind of eyeballing as you go around the edge. So there's that. So now we're ready to start putting our grommets in, and this is where you need to pay attention if you have a directional fabric. This book will open like this. All right, so my owls are nice and right side up, and this is the side that's going to flip under like that. So pay attention and get it the right way. So this is my top. Now there's one other trick, and you need to look at the chart to figure out where all your grommets go, but I'll show you how to measure. You can't really measure from this rounded corner up here or down here. So measure in from the edge to what's called the center on your page, on your graph, And then transfer those marks to the top and bottom. And if you want to, you can do the center mark here too at that time. The center mark is just halfway between the top and the bottom. So this is where my closure grommet is going to go. So now I have the center marks up here and down here. And because this has a 1-inch spine, it's a 1/2 inch on each side of the center. So this book is marked. I am not going to punch that hole or that hole, the centers on the top and bottom. So we have 2 holes here and 2 holes here ready to be punched for our grommet. I'm going to use my Crocodile today. If you have one, they work great. If you don't have one, the grommet set that you purchase probably has a little cutter that came with it, and you can use that cutter to cut through your fabrics. I'm using the 3/16 inch hole. So I've got my 2 at the bottom. Two at the top, and then go down and do my center one. Just like that. So then you need to clean up these holes using your scissors and getting all of the threads and just extra little bits that got left behind. There we go. This set of grommets that I purchased works with my Crocodile. So I have this bottom one set on 2 and this one set on B. That's how I have it set up, and it works for me. I would practice with whatever your equipment is and the grommet sets that you have before you try it on your project, just to be sure. Alright, so you put the grommet through the front, then you put the washer on the back and squish it down. You come line it up on this bottom part and press, and it pushes it together. So do all 5. Okay, just that quick and easy. All 5 of my grommets are in. I ironed away all my marks. This little grommet right here is the exact center of the back of your cover. You can fold it there, and then that tells you where to fold this piece here. So this is completely sewn and ready for the elastics. Okay, to thread the elastics, the way I do it, it's just super simple. You could get by with just putting 2 elastics in your cover because you can put a lot more than 1 cover per elastic, but we're going to do 4 today. So you just take it, I like to go in the back, down the front, back through this and up again, down. And when you're doing your elastic, undo it like this so it doesn't get rolls in it, so it doesn't want to twist. And then go back in here, back down through here. Do your best to not have these elastics get twisted up. You want them to look nice and neat from the outside. And then give it a snip and do the same back here, trying to line them up so that they don't get a twist in them. And then you pull it tighter. You might think it's a little bit too tight. You want to have your cover just slightly pull up, about like this, so that your elastics are really nice and tight. The booklets, when you put them in, will push them back down. You don't want them, you know, really, really tight, but tight enough to just barely move this up like this, see? Because if you do your elastics too loose, let's just say it's really loose, then your booklets will want to pull them right, they'll hang out the edges. We don't want that. So there's that. And then to do the closure elastic, it's really simple. Just measure from the back to the front and back, cut it, and when we tie a knot in it, it will put tension in it. Find yourself a 2-hole button with some nice big holes and put your elastic through like this, 1 in each. All right, pull it down, tie a knot in it. Like that. And then trim off your ends. And if you have a lighter, if you take and just barely touch the ends of it like that, it melts this coating and it won't ravel anymore. All right, then take and pull the knot up so that the knot goes right behind your button. So the button's on top, knot's right behind it. Take this loop, go right through the center, and ta-da! Your button keeps it from being able to pull through. And your Pixie planner is ready for inserts. So here's our planner. We're completely done. And as you can see, there's very little sewing involved in this. You sew on the line and then you have to top stitch. That's the only sewing involved. So if you're an advanced beginner, this is a great project for you. I thought you might like to see one that has the inserts already in it, and I did a video on how I made these inserts. And this is with 4 really substantial inserts, and there's still room for 2 or 3 more inside this book. So this is what the Pixie planner looks like with inserts, and these are 8.5 by 11 folded in half. So until next time, this was Cindy from Vintage to New.